We again invite you to stay for our last additional talk by Professor Slobodan Curcic of Princeton, who will update us on the status of medieval monuments in Kosovo. Professor Curcic?
This is a presentation that I would much rather not have had to give. And I'm very grateful to Dr. Helen Evans and to the Metropolitan Museum for making it possible to look at images which none of you, I'm sure, will enjoy looking at. On March 17th and 18th of this year, exactly a month ago, a new outbreak of violence occurred in Kosovo, which I'm sure most of you haven't been informed about. The consequences of this violence in terms of the cultural patrimony are devastating. 35 new incidents of a church burning and demolition took place in those 2 days. This comes after 5 years of the United Nations control of Kosovo, and after the apparent subsiding of the initial violence which took place in 1999, at the time when United Nations took control of the region formally. At that point, 119 churches were wantonly damaged or destroyed. So the total number now stands somewhere around 150. The medieval count of monuments that have been lost is somewhere around 20. Some of these were buildings which were subsequently added onto and remodeled. I will not explain these photographs in detail. I will make a few comments here and there, but you will have an opportunity to see for yourself what has occurred in this latest spree of violence. Devic Monastery was one of the originally medieval monasteries that was initially attacked in 1999, but was spared total destruction. However, the haunting of this monastery continued, and this final destruction occurred on this occasion. Desecration precedes the destruction, and this involves sacred memory and memory. The tomb of the saint Ioannicius, one of the holy men around whose tomb the monastery arose in the medieval period, was broken into and the fire was set in it. The tombs of nuns and abbesses of the monastery, for this is a nunnery, have been destroyed in a pattern which characteristically marks the destruction of Serbian cultural and religious patrimony in Kosovo. The monastery of the Holy Archangels in the vicinity of Princeton, revived as an active monastery in the last decade or so, has also suffered in a violent manner. The remains of a monastic wing, which I had a chance to visit last year as a member of the UNESCO mission. The greatest damage, and singularly the most egregious example of the kind of organized destruction, took place in the town of Princeton, a famous medieval town and the city, modern city, which had preserved so much of the inter-ethnic and intercultural richness, and one of the rare places in the Balkans, in fact, has now lost all of its medieval patrimony in 2 days. The fires which you see raging there throughout the town of Prizren were carefully set in areas which had been inhabited and partially abandoned by the Serbs after 1999 first spree of violence, and around specific medieval monuments which were targeted for the occasion. The 19th century New Serbian Cathedral was actually standing, as the photograph shows, and had just received a new covering, lead covering, 2 years ago, when the final act of destruction took place. And the photograph on the right shows some of that. You will see some further images. The photograph on the left was taken on the second day after the incident took place, indicating life as normal going on in the vicinity of the destroyed building. This is the message of the perpetrators, which sums up, I think, better than anything else, the purpose of the action. And here you see some of the iconoclastic techniques in action. The monument was destroyed in a characteristic manner, which involved burning first and then dynamiting. The photograph on the left was taken on March 17th, after the church was burned initially. Its belfry had been partially preserved, and the second photograph shows the final act of demolition. The most important monument, and one that brings this to the hearts of everybody in this room, I think, is the Church of Bogorodica Ljeviška, a monument which dates from the very period to which our exhibition is dedicated, built by the Serbian king Milutin, the son-in-law of Andronicus II, whose title and whose family affiliations are proudly displayed on this building in a major inscription, historical inscription, has long been a subject of attacks. Originally earmarked to be destroyed by dynamite in 1999, an attempt which was foiled by the German troops, core troops in Prizren, this time unfortunately failed in terms of this attempt to foil. A second attempt at this failed, and the church was set on fire. The interior of the narthex is completely burned, as were a number of other things which happened, such as the destruction of the altar table, which you see here. The fresco of the Virgin, which belongs to an earlier phase of the church, it's a 13th century fresco, discovered in 1952 during a major restoration of the building, as it appeared after the discovery and until recently, and you see what is left on the right. The most serious, historically speaking, damage is that to the gallery of historical portraits, which involve the Nemanjić family tree, starting with the founder, whose portrait appears above the main door, Stefan Nemanja, surrounded by his two sons, the Archbishop Sava on his right, and the first king, Stefan, the first crown, on the left. And you see here barely the image of Stefan Nemanja on the right. This is another portrait. And finally, the portrait of King Milutin, whom we have seen a couple of times in recent days. As I said earlier, the son-in-law of the Byzantine Emperor Andronicus II, through a negotiated marriage, negotiated by Theodore Metochitis, who left a famous text Byzantine embassy to the Serbian court in which this marriage had been negotiated, and following which a major influx of Byzantine artists and architects into Serbia began to occur. So we are unfortunately in a sad situation to note the loss of historical memory and of artistic patrimony. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Curcic.